Good morning. We have a white Ford pickup 2844 JB that currently needs to move.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, one and all. Hello, everyone. May I invite you to find your stations? There are tables. There are bistro tables underneath the main hall, and we also have some space underneath the tent outside. You'll be able to hear. You won't be able to see as well. But so we have space inside as well as outside. And please just let's get ready to start. We are live streaming starting at 10 o'clock. We're running a few minutes behind. Everyone hearing me okay? Okay. Wonderful. Lady Allison. I don't. Folks, good morning again. May I have your attention? We're gonna start by singing All Things Bright and Beautiful, accompanied by the lovely Alison Fletcher. And may I invite you to sing heartily, lustily, and let's start off with a bang for this celebration for the life of John Fletcher. Okay, Alison. Wonderful. Thank you, Lady Allison, for that beautiful accompaniment of All Things Bright and Beautiful, all creatures great and small. Good folks, how wonderful it is indeed, as we sang just now, that God gave us eyes to see them and lips that we might tell. How great is God Almighty, who has made all things well. And I must say it's so lovely to hear that we are all in such good voice on this early Saturday morning. I stepped away from the mic as we sang. So good morning, one and all, and welcome, family and friends, to the celebration of a life well lived by John Oliver Fletcher. My name is Paul Robotham, close neighbor and family friend of John and of his dear sons, Andrew and Mark. Well, first of all, Andrew and Mark, Adam and Dylan, please accept our very deepest sympathy at the loss of your dear father and grandfather. We know these past few weeks have not been an easy time for you, and we are here with you. We stand with you. We embrace you. And we pray that the peace that passes all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Let me extend warm greetings to all who are here today, as well as to those who are following us online. I'm sure that it's comforting to John's loved ones to see such a large turnout of family, friends, acquaintances, well-wishers. And we know that were it not for some space constraints, there would be so many more who would have loved to be here in person to honor our dear brother John. And may I say that it's so fitting that we're holding this celebration in the historic Hope Gardens, a place of such natural beauty and deep serenity, a place that has been dear to Jamaicans from all walks of life and to visitors from countless countries for over 150 years. I think it's a place that was especially dear to John, who really did love all things bright and beautiful, all creatures, great and small. So, family and friends, we are gathered here today on Saturday, 16th November, at Pages in the Garden, in the natural wonder that is Hope Gardens, to pay tribute to a giant of a man, a devoted father and grandfather, a treasured neighbor, a true Jamaican patriot, a businessman par excellence, a scholar, a diplomat, a leader in his time, and so much more. Briefly, folks, for my part, I met John in 2007 when he was a sprightly 78 years old, and I was in my very, very, very early 50s. Like all his neighbors at Baden Court, Marjorie and I, my wife, we came to really love and respect him, to genuinely admire and cherish him, and to revel and delight in his experience, his wit, his charm. And you can certainly tell the measure of the man, dear friends, by his truly remarkable children and grandchildren, devoted sons and grandsons, kind and loving friends and neighbors who meant everything to John, and whom I'm sure he loved and cherished above all else. Dear friends, his passing has left such a great void in our lives, a void that I dare say can never be filled. Our evening walks in Sherburne Heights, where John and we lived, will never be the same without him. Our management of Baden Court Affairs, where John lived, will suffer greatly from his absence. But yes, even as we are sorrowful over his passing, we can certainly treasure the amazing times that we had together with him and the lively conversations and depth of knowledge that he brought to our encounters. His memory will certainly live in our hearts forever. And so we say, may John rest in peace, and may light perpetual shine upon him. Folks, before we move into the tributes, I'm going to ask you to stand, those who are not already standing. Are we going to pray a blessing upon us and upon John's family? And if Mr. Robert Harris is here, I would like to invite him to do so at this time. Robert Harris is one of the walkers in the famous Sherburne Heights walking group, of which John was an integral part.
Let us pray. Father, we give you thanks for today. Lord, we invite you amongst us as we celebrate and remember a well-lived life of John Fletcher. Father, we ask your continuing blessings upon Mark, Andrew, and other family members. Lord, we ask that in this time you will comfort them, give them your peace, give them their joy, and that, God, you will bring back memories to their lives of John. So, Father, we dedicate this time to you as we celebrate and honor John's memory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Sir Robert. So, dear friends, we're going to now proceed with the program as outlined in your handouts that you have. And the first tribute will be from John's son, the famous, the inimitable Brother Andrew. He will be followed by John's grandsons, who are here from abroad, Adam and Dylan. We will then hear from Mr. Robert Fletcher. Same name, John's very good friend, no relation, I'm told, but sometimes described as an adopted son. We will then hear from Mr. Ricardo Miller, a past president of BirdLife, representing the birdwatching community. And last but not least, we will hear from Mr. Noel Levy, John's close friend. After the tributes, we will have a rendition of Or Blue Mountains by Ulla and Allison. We will then partake of brunch, and when we have all been served, the mic will be open for memories and short stories of John to be shared. And there will be also a little trivia quiz, so pay attention to the tributes, and you may win a small prize. So, without further ado, over to Brother Andrew.
Hi. Well, I thought this day would come. Here goes. John, thinker, traveler, guide, mentor, student, and friend. He was all this to all of us. He lived 95 years strong, a life well lived. Dad was my hero. I was always eager to introduce him to my friends. I thought he was so cool. He's like my big brother. Here goes. Dad came to stay in '05 at Badencourt. I challenged him to record his life. He bought a notebook and over the next few months filled 200 pages with his life. He said he would think about the next episode while lying in bed and then write it down. He wrote in pen. He thought so clearly. I still have the original ledger. There are hardly any corrections. It tells a story of a man taking opportunities, rising above his parents' expectations, becoming a part of an emerging nation. He became a Jamaican citizen in 1965. I'd like to share his story. I call this Foundations. Born 5th of April 1929 in Balham, London. He's born within the sound of Bow Bells, which makes him a Cockney. His parents were Walter and Dora Fletcher, known as Wall and Doll to their friends, which in Cockney accent sounds like war and door. Actually, Dad had a strong Cockney accent, but told me he got rid of it. It made him stand up. John attended Grange Park School and then won a scholarship to Southall County School. I will quote from him occasionally. He wrote, "The Second World War was declared September 1939 and dominated my life for the next 6 years and continued to influence it for years afterwards, possibly to shape it until today. School life was affected by the war. Air raid drills interrupted classes and students gathered in chosen corridors where thick walls offered protection. The teaching staff, which was almost entirely made up of elderly, often retired teachers. The younger ones were at war. Everything was rationed: food, clothing, sweets, petrol, coal for heating, soap, and any purchase required the presentation of a ration book. 5 years of this produced a very lean population, but a healthy one. Dad's secret to a long and healthy life, maybe? Sad times. Some of my saddest memories, he writes, were the all too frequent morning assemblies at which the headmaster announced the death in action of an old boy or girl. Still remembered the sense of disbelief that my idol, Willie Angus, was no more. What a terrible waste, not even 20 years old. After high school, he started working at Kodak, attended night school to qualify for university. He passed all 4 subjects, pure applied maths, physics, chem. Immediately, though, he got a call-up, national service, 2 years in the Army. While in the Army, He applied for overseas posting, a gamble, as some overseas destinations were less desirable. Palestine, where Zionists were killing British troops. Nothing changed there. Most troops went east to Egypt and India. When I was posted to Jamaica, I was one of the lucky ones. In October 48, he sailed on the SS Orbiter to Kingston via Port of Spain. Call this the New World. He writes, sailed into Kingston Harbor at daybreak one morning in mid-October. I was immediately struck by the magnificent mountains with the city below, the great harbor all around us. Brown pelicans sat on wood pilings as we sailed by. It really felt like the start of a great adventure. He was in the army now over here. As part of the Royal Ordnance Corps, Dad served as a stock clerk in the main supply depot at the foot of Princess Street. That location is now the Digicel building. He volunteered to live in the depot. Life was much more enjoyable. He writes, the clerical staff among whom I worked were mainly Jamaicans, male and female. So early I was able to interact with the people around me, who looked so different to me, but who turned out to be so familiar. Their interest in sports, clothes, reading the newspaper, and making jokes. The only army activity I can remember to encourage social contact was a weekly dance at the Naffy Club, where I met the girl I was destined to marry, Kitty Paxton. After an enjoyable year in Jamaica, it was time to be discharged. Should he stay or return to the UK? Kitty's family welcomed me into their home, and I got on well with all of them. So it was helped to make up my mind. The low expectations of my parents' social environment were also a concern. So I chose to stay in this totally new, different setting that seems to hold a new and different future. Well, he was discharged. He got his first job at a place called Citrus Company of Jamaica in May Pen, owned by the Sharp family. Senior Mr. Sharp wanted to build a similar operation in Stan Creek, British Honduras, the jungle, which is 4 hours down the coast from Belize City and 25 miles drive up a valley. Dad's education continued with 3 seasons in the jungle of British Honduras, now known as Belize. But he only visited for the citrus seasons till the 3rd one. So he writes, the canning operation had some problems. I was sent to put them back on track. I was only 20 years old and entering a whole new world. He writes, jungle creatures. A trench had been cut to accommodate a 6-inch water pipe. With my small crew of 8, we were to install the river pump, lay the pipe, and prepare the holdings. On my first early morning walk to the river, I understood why it was named Medusa Plain. There were at least 10 snakes wriggling along in the empty trench. This would be a daily experience dealt with a cutlass-wielding member of my crew. He writes another one. We all went on a picnic for a lovely swimming hole in the river, but the bottlers flies and the mosquitoes were so bad that we had to eat our picnic lunch immersed up to our neck in water. I don't know how they ate. The tiny fish discovered and kept on nipping at any mole on our skin and any nipple. The picnic was soon abandoned. My mom. Our mother, Kathleen May Paxton, known as Kitty to her friends and family. Kitty was becoming an integral part of his evolving world. Marriage was on the cards, but Kitty was a city girl, Kingston-born, schooled at Woolmer's. Would jungle life appeal to her? Our parents were married June 51. Hurricane Charlie hit August 7th. Then they were off to Stan Creek in September. After a while at Stan Creek, Kitty needed a break from jungle life and returned to Kingston for 3 weeks, which turned into 3 months. This signaled the end of Stan Creek as a career opportunity for Dad. At the end of the season, Dad resigned and headed back to Kingston. This is a little part from him getting married. He writes, on June 16th, 1951, Kitty and I were married at St. Luke's Church in Crossroads. Wedding reception was held at Paxton House, 151B Orange Street, next to the old JPS tram depot, where Mum's father, Harry, had managed the Kingston tram service until its closure in 1948. The reception had its memorable moments. Harry forgot to serve the rum punch, stored in quart bottles. Nobody else knew the bottles only contained the strong, the sour, and the sweet. To have the weak added later, well, they served it without the weak, with ice, and it hit St. Andrew matrons like Mike Tyson. So he's back in Kingston now. I mean, he's like 24, and he gets a job in Kingston at a place called Caribbean Preserving Company on Spanish Town Road. They moved to a small cottage on Skyline Drive, Jack's Hill. He writes, Leonard Goldfein, an English Jew who had made his money by buying distressed goods and finding a buyer for them. Most things were still rationed in England, including sugar. Leonard Goldfein was just the man to take advantage of such opportunity. We were purchasing hundreds of tons of refined sugar from Monmouth. Some were converted into thick syrup, 2 parts sugar, 1 part water, filled in wooden barrels, and then you add a tablespoon of orange flavor and call it orange syrup, and send it back to England to the soft drink manufacturers. Didn't last long. On Christmas Day, the following year, Goldfein was killed in a plane crash at Prestwick in Scotland. On January the 3rd, Barclays Bank sent in a receiver, closed the factory down. I was now without a job. I couldn't even cash my December paycheck as the company bank account was frozen. Moving on. He had to find another job. So he's a citrus guy. He found a job at Citrus Growers as the manager of a fresh fruit packing plant in Bogwalk. Dad initially lived in Linstead, while Mum stayed on in Jack's Hill till I was born. The family then moved to Bogwalk, where there were homes for senior managers that were just across the train line from the factory. He spent 12 years rising to the level of general manager. One of Dad's innovations was Juiciful. It appears that when he was in the US, he had found they used this wax box to can juice, well, box juice. So he decided to do it, and it worked. And he says it's the beginning of the Jamaica box juice market. Yes. I had been born during the transition. My mother stayed on in Kingston while Dad sorted out our living accommodation. Dad writes, one evening after work, I was at a friend's home in Linstead having a drink. About 7 p.m., the phone rang. It was Harold DeKenney calling to tell me that they were taking Kitty to Nuttall. I should stay calm, take my time, meet them there. Of course, I didn't stay calm. I reached the hospital about the same time. And that was Old Time Road, no highway. Eventually, at 4 a.m., February the 4th, Andrew was born, and my first sight of Kitty was as she was wheeled out of the delivery room. I bent over, kissed her, and passed out. When I came to, I was on the delivery table, and the nurses were all having a good laugh. Well, we move on. We are now in Kingston again. We've moved into Graham Heights. Year is 1966. Dad is hired by an entrepreneur named John DeLissa, who wanted to start a factory in a new government development in St. Thomas, being spearheaded by Robert Lightbourne, to develop products made in Jamaica. It was called Associated Enterprises. He writes, virtually all these products were made with imported raw materials, and most of the cans and bottles were also imported, but they were made in Jamaica, and that was the point of the whole exercise. Sadly, it wasn't viable. He writes, But short product runs, low profit margins due to intense competition, mainly from Grace, prevented us from reaching our break-even point. In 1970, after 4 years of operation, John made the decision to close. So we move on now. Dad was now ready to paddle his own canoe. He leased a property on a newly developed subdivision called South Haven in Yallis. He called the company Fletcher Bowman and his product line Plaza. There was never a Bowman, just a play on words. Figure that one out. Equipment was always secondhand. Any factory selling out, Dad was there looking for old iron. Fletcher Bowman's first and largest production was mangoes in brine, using the beefy mango found in abundance in St. Thomas. He had actually done something when he was with Leonard Goldfein, so he learned the process. He was able to organize a contract with a company in the UK, Sharwoods, who required that a local representative verify the product. This person was a young lawyer from Mars, Fletcher and Gordon, Mr. Noel Levy, who will share a bit more. Dad packed a variety of other products: ackee, pickles, sauces, cherries, olives. Sadly, high interest rates of 36% made the business untenable. It was sold. Dad thought he had let his staff down, but when he made them redundant, but he left them with a legacy that would serve them for the rest of their life. I call it Fletcher Clearville. He writes, along with Peter Clare, I had been working for almost 3 years on a small housing site development nearby for my workers and mine, for his workers and mine. This came about when he bought 7 acres of land cheaply from the International Telephone and Telegraph when they had left Jamaica in the 70s. It took years to get the plans approved by Parish Council for a subdivision, more to get electricity, street lights, and water. But it was worth it. 24 of our workers bought their lots for $500 each. By 1983, some had built and occupied their homes, and others were well on their way. It subsequently developed into a nice community. Proud of you, Dad. During the Fletcher Bowman era, my brother had joined and was very active in all aspects of the business. Mark received his business education working with Dad, that he has subsequently used to develop his own. Dad also named Mark. It's a well-known story. His friends all know it. He had contracted chicken pox. That's Mark. And of course, remained at home in isolation. When he had got past the infectious stage, some of his friends were allowed to visit, and one afternoon I came home from work, looked in on him recuperating in his bedroom, surrounded by half a dozen friends. In jest, I greeted, "Hi, Spot," and the nickname stuck like glue. He's been known as Spot ever since. The Spot faded, but the nickname remained. Yeah, I became Big Spot. Moving into coffee time. Salada, due to a serious health issue, blamed the doctors say on stress, Dad needed a less stressful job. Fletcher Bowman had been his company, and he took his responsibilities to heart. Salada was just a job. He had been on the board for several years and was asked to manage a plant till a new manager could be found. I guess the board decided that they'd found the best man for the job. It turned into a 9-year assignment. He retired at 65 with a small pension. He needed something to do. Coffee roasters. He writes, I decided a small roastery would be my aim. I therefore applied to the Coffee Industry Board for a roaster's license. Mark also offered to sell all my production under his own Country Traders brand. So that's how we started. Dad had finally found his perfect partner. Mark was sales-oriented while Dad was production. Mark got a sage advisor and Dad got a youthful partner. It worked. We're kind of moving on now. Retired. My mother died. She had an allergic reaction after a minor op, and she died very quickly. It was a massive shock, especially for Dad. His marriage of 46 years was over in a moment. He slowly put his life together and got on with it. Dad remarried for a few years later. Dad married after a few years. This marriage was short but sweet. I believe he needed more time for himself and his interests. He moved into Baden Court in 2005, continued to be involved in coffee roasters. Exercise involved daily walks, weekly yoga sessions, and some weight workouts. Cryptic crosswords were his specialty. He called it mental yoga. What could not be solved today would reveal itself to him after a night's gestation. We cooked for each other. Mine was Saturday pasta, while his was a range of dishes he was researching online. Chickpeas curry, shrimp fried rice, tofu, noodle bowls, and many others. COVID-19 allowed me to work remotely, which in turn allowed me to spend more time with Dad. Oh, he loved reading. The Kindle enabled his reading as his eyesight deteriorated by changing the font size. I mean, in his later years, he could get about one sentence on the screen. He was a fan of Amazon and the book availability. Dad, okay, I've reached their closing. I think that's me. No, I got to mention, he wasn't a joiner, but he did do some. He was JEA president in 1980, just before the famous general election. He was Swedish consul for 17 years. Somebody convinced him to join Rotary, and he was a founding member of New Kingston Rotary and their first president. He was tribunal chairman for the National Resources Conservation Authority, and he used to write articles in the Daily News. He wrote mainly on energy and environmental issues. He wrote under the name John Oliver. I've left I would say his passion, one of his passions for last, birds. He writes, most of the time, his father was not well. He had come over from England, and he would sit quietly on our veranda at Graham Heights. My father writes, most of the time he sat quietly on the veranda watching birds in the garden. It was a pastime that got me hooked on bird watching for the rest of my life. He would describe the birds he had seen and their relationship with each other. The little blue ones and the brown ones are just like family, he told me. But I knew nothing about them. So I bought James Bond's book, Birds of the West Indies. It explained that they were in fact family, male and female indigo buntings on their winter visit from North America. His father's question about birds ignites the student within. He was to become one of Jamaica's birding authorities. One of his favorite bird sites was the Yellow Salt Pond, watching a variety of shorebirds, because he worked in that area, so he would go by in the evening. He enjoyed the solitude it offered. With more time in retirement years, he was able to travel extensively on bird tours, Ecuador, Panama, Arizona, England, and other places. He certainly loved to share his passion for nature and its wonders. I'm sure his fellow birders will have their stories to tell. In closing, he writes, I do feel a strong affinity for my adopted country, Jamaica. It has many failings which seem to be gaining ground, yet at its core, it is a brave and optimistic country that excels in the most amazing and unexpected ways. He also writes on old age, another feature of old age is supposed to be an awareness of and the concern with death. I'm certainly aware of it, mainly through the frequent deaths of friends and acquaintances, but it does not give me cause for concern. I hope that I do not have a painful or lingering death, but other than that, it does not worry me. I have no religion. I expect no afterlife. Like every other living thing, death will be the end, and my existence beyond that will be in my children and grandchildren. If, as some religions claim, the spark of life survives the body's death to return in a new entity, I hope I will have lived righteously enough to warrant an upgrade. Thank you. I want to thank all those who helped us get through this transitionary period. His many friends and families who called, visited at hospital and at Mark's home. He knew he was loved. His carers, Dr. Bandara, Nurse Holding, Nurse Patterson, who nursed him till the end. Dr. Spence for guiding us through the end-of-life journey. Most of all to my brother Mark, who turned his home into a care center and gave that all his love and attention up to his last breath. We are grateful to you all, to your support and kind words. Our father left us many memories and life lessons. We will cherish them and share them. May the blessings be. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Dylan, Adam. I don't know why Uncle Andrew got any tough like that, but we'll get going. First, I just want to thank everybody for being here to honor and celebrate Grandpa's life, and more importantly, reflect on the impact he had on all of us. And it's hard to put into words how much he really meant to us, but we're still grateful for the time we had to be around him and for this opportunity to share a few memories that we hold close to us. So from as far back as we can remember, we're always doing things with Grandpa. Whether that be rafting on the Rio Grande, eating devil ham and tough crackers, to feeding crocodiles at Black River and picking off all the guava off their trees, to going into the office and fooling around with some ancient-looking toolbox he had under his desk with all sorts of scissors and letter openers. We did it all. However, one key tradition that we developed in his later years was our trips to the country. We'd go to either Silver Sands, Runaway Bay, or somewhere else that had a beach and spend a couple days swimming, eating up our big food, and just cooling off. Here's where we got to learn all of his stories of what he did after coming to Jamaica at the end of World War II at just 18 years old, his adventures to South America, and most of all, any historical event that you feel like asking about that has ever happened since he stepped foot in Jamaica. And trust me, he'll tell you every date, every person that was there, and probably all the exact time that it happened to. So just be prepared. He was a very, very wise old man, but don't let that fool you. He was strong and rotted too. Up until I got to college, Grandpa was beating me constantly in arm wrestle. And I know I don't look that strong, but he's a 90-year-old man we're talking about. He's always had these 30-pound dumbbells at home that he would do God knows what with to make him so strong. But it worked. He would walk up and down Stony Hill every morning to exercise. And I don't know if you guys know where he lived up in Stony Hill, but it was steep. I don't even think you could have told me to walk up there right now. And this is something us and Daddy would always boast about and probably will never stop boasting about. I still remember the time when we got some bonsai trees from his neighbor that grew them, and we were driving around the area looking for some moss to put on top of the soil to keep it moist. Me, Adam, and Daddy all jump into the pickup and are ready to go. Meanwhile, Grandpa is hanging off the side like a madman, saying it's easier to spot the moss from out there. And this is not when he was no young boy, it's about 5 years ago. Grandpa always taught us some important lessons too, but not by telling us straight. He'd always have to tell our story. And this story goes way back to when he was working in the canning industry, doing mango chutney and all sorts of things. He liked the idea of mango chutney, but always wanted to figure out the recipe for mango pickle pepper sauce. He'd try, and year after year, tweaking the proportions of ingredients, and still the pickle pepper sauce wouldn't taste right. Eventually, he said, forget it, and still continued on his journey making mango chutney. However, one day, he found a barrel of mango chutney that was sitting for about 3 or 4 years that he forgot to sell, and I'd just been in the storage room. And he said, you know what, let me try it. Lo and behold, mango pick up pepper sauce. Later that year, he brought it to a trade show, and it took off. Everybody loved it. A prominent businessman at the expo came up to him and said, I'll order 50 cases. How soon can I get them? And he laughed, and he said, well, about 3 years' time. And some of you may be wondering, what is the lesson learned out of all of this? And I know it sounds a little cheesy, but just keep doing what you're doing, and even if you don't do it right or forget about it in a barrel in a storage room, just give it 3 years, and you might have whatever your version of mango pickle pepper sauce is. So looking back, we can say how blessed we are to have such a great man to call our grandpa. In every way, he showed us how to live fully, to never stop learning, and most of all, how to appreciate life's quieter joys. We hope to carry these lessons on with us and live with the same kindness, strength, and spirit that he did. I want to say a big thank you to the Birding Group, that was his second family, all his neighbors up at Sherborne Heights. Thank you to everyone that came and visited him when he was sick, and thank you to everyone for being here today. I know each and every one of you meant so much to him, and we're forever grateful for everything you've done. Thank you, Daddy and Uncle Andrew, for being there for him till the end. I know he was glad to have you two by his side and couldn't be more proud of the two of you. But most of all, thank you, Grandpa, for the lasting impact you've had on our lives. In every story you've told, every bit of wisdom you've shared, and every memory we've made together. We'll always carry a piece of you with us, one way or another. And I'll remember to bring up 2 beef patty for you when I come to visit.
Okay, over to Sir Robert. Yes.
Good morning, everybody. John was my neighbor, and just because my name is Fletcher, I kind of got adopted, kind of unofficially. But I've had one experience, which is the reason I'm here today. Everybody knows that John walks. And sometimes he walks at odd times. You would see him at 3 o'clock. As the feeling takes him, he walks. One day, I was coming from work, and he was walking back up to Baden Court, and it was beginning to rain. And I said, John, it's going to rain, let me carry you up. And he said, yes. And as we drove in, he said, come in to the apartment. And I went in. And then I asked him a question, and I'm sorry I asked. Because I said to him, John, when you walk, what do you think about? What a question. He said, well, I think about my whole life. I said, really, John? Your whole life? Him said, no, well, more or less. He said, Robert, listen, let me tell you what happened. It's not so much me thinking about my whole life, but my whole life thinking about me. I said, what do you mean by that? Him say, different episodes come up to be thought about. In other words, as I'm walking today, what happened in Belize comes up to be considered. And next week, something else. And he started to roll out his life. I didn't expect it. Kind of saw that I was a little uneasy, and he said, "You're trying to listen. Listen." And I listened. 3 hours, Well, I had questions, but I shut up. I can't remember, Andrew, all of the things that he said, and I haven't tried to retain it. But I know some of the things that you have shared with us are some of the things that he went through in his recounting. Then I got some courage. And I said to him, "John, you've had so much experience. It's like you're graduating with honors in so many things." And he thought about that. He said, "Well, I'm not dying." I said, "No, John, I'm not talking about dying. Graduated." He thought about it again. I don't think he liked the idea. But it was a good time ago, long before any problems that would cause him to pass. And then he said, he nodded, and he said, "Yes, as I'm walking and as I'm going along, I think I'm realizing that I've done many courses. And a couple of the courses I failed. And some of them I've done again and passed. And some of them I can't bother with. They're not worth it." So I said to him, so John, without fasting into your business, without fasting into your business, tell me something. So if you agree that you're near graduation, what degree do you have? I mean, it's not manufacturing the degree. We were talking about qualities, right? What degree? And he said to me, caring. That's all. Caring. I said to him, explain. This is hard for me, So be patient with me. He said, at every point and in everything, I interpreted caring as meaning giving my best to everything that comes to my hand to do. We are here to share in this caring graduation. That's why we're here. Because I know that what each of us, you have in your mind about him, is about his caring. And I know that that is so. So it's interesting because it's not normal, not always normal, that there's this harmony between inside and outside. That what John says he nurtured in himself is what we see. That's really important. Because I've never had the opportunity before of hearing from somebody what they considered was their dominant internal achievement. And they achieved it internally, and we experienced it. That's marvelous. One more thing. Boy, I don't think he could be prouder of Mark and Andrew and you, another man. So he graduated happy about his internal quality. And that is something that is good to know. There is no doubt that what we shared with him is what he is. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Robert. Now we pass on to Mr. Ricardo Miller. Mr. Miller. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ricardo Miller. I am a member of BirdLife Jamaica. And so I'm here to pay tribute to John Fletcher on behalf of BirdLife Jamaica. Andrew mentioned, I think it was the grandkids who mentioned that he has another family. And that family is the BirdLife Jamaica family. We've heard all morning about John's loves, John's passions, and every now and then you hear the word bird. John loved birds. And for us, BirdLife Jamaica members, this is like a final bird watching occasion with John in the gardens because we've spent countless time here. It was only 5 years ago, this very venue, we paid tribute to him in life at his 90th birthday. And there's a table over there with some things that we had given him, a book that says, a lifelong love for birds, and some other items. Now, John is a person, John is an old man. No, an old soul, but I described to Emma once that, have you ever seen a picture of a young Santa Claus? It doesn't exist. We've just always known John as an old man. And I'm looking at that monitor over there and I'm seeing pictures of John popping up and then I see some black and white pictures of somebody. I have no idea who that is, but that's John was in his 50s when I was born. That just gives an idea. And because of that, he commanded the space without even opening his mouth. He commanded respect. If people are having, making a lot of noise and he puts up his hand to say something. And that's another thing that, embodied John. It was patience. I've made a few notes. I was told this was a very casual occasion, dressed as if I'm going birding, right? So this is, as I say, a final, birding with John in Hope Gardens. If there was another venue that they would have chosen, it would have been Yalas, but I don't think he would have liked it there because that's the other place that John loved. You talk about the solitude, just being there, observing. And in BirdLife Jamaica, we have something called a life membership, and John is like the very definition of a life member of BirdLife Jamaica. You can sign up to be a life member and you pay one fee or something. Now, John is a person who became a life member but continued to pay the annual fee. So that gives you an idea of the type of person John was. I mentioned his favorite places. The next thing was his favorite bird. Does anyone know his favorite bird? The toady. Of course, the toady. We probably know it as robin redbreast, a little green bird, cute as a button. That's John's favorite bird. And you want to see his face lights up when he sees that. And so, of course, we gave him a artwork with a toady, of course. So, that's just John. The other thing about John was patience. Patience was what he exhumed. You're around him, he's never in a hurry to do anything. His voice is always at one level. The volume is never up. The words are never bundled together. He has utmost patience, and that is one of the things he has imparted on me. Now, I will touch a little more on a personal note as to how John impacted my life. I met him 20 plus years ago. I was a research student. I was studying birds. And I got invited to BirdLife Jamaica naturally. And so I'm a BirdLife member, and I'm studying birds. I'm the young gun. I know everything. I'm shooting from the hip, that's a that, that's a that, and that. And John simply rested his hand on my shoulder, and he said, Ricardo, you have to give people time to realize what is going on. Give them an opportunity to even discover the birds themselves. You know it, but give them a little, let them discover it themselves. And he sort of slowed me down. And what he did for me has changed my life, really. One day, he was going to Hardware Gap up by Newcastle. And he said he had a group of foreigners who are going birding, and he's going birding with them. Would you like to join me? And I'm like, sure. He said he wasn't seeing the birds as well, he wasn't hearing as well. So he wanted, the young gun to come along. And, I'm helping him out, I'm showing the birds and doing everything. But at the end of the day, John called me aside and he gave me money in US dollars. And I'm like, what's this for? And he's like, well, they paid me to be their guy to show them the birds, and so I'm giving you some. I'm like, they paid you to do this? Are you kidding me? And, that changed my life, actually. Because, there was a hotel that would arrange birding trips, and they would call John, and John said, hey, call Ricardo. He can help. And so I started taking over from John as like a guide on the side. And this morning, I went with some foreigners, look at owls at 5 a.m., and I handed them off to one of my guides because I've made a business out of it. And it is a successful business, and that is something that it would have, it's probably the biggest impact on my life. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it right now. And so from then on, John was my unofficial mentor. He guided me. He taught me so much, right? I would visit him up at Sherborne Heights. We'll have coffee and just chat. We'll go for a walk, right? I was at his 95th celebration up in Stony Hill recently. And it never seemed like, come October, he wouldn't be with us because John was running circles, at his 95th birthday. But John wanted to go as his son mentioned, he didn't want to linger when it was his time. And looking back, every time I relate a story about John, I said John lived the perfect life. He lived the perfect life, perfect in the sense that he experienced everything: love, loss, family, and friends that just kept on coming. As he got older, he's getting more friends. And so that is what I really wanted to leave with everyone. And the final point I wrote down actually was strength. His strength was unmatched. His patience was unmatched. His influence on everyone around him, no matter the age group. That was the other thing. Look on the monitor, you'll see John with, children down here. He's a teacher. And so with that, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to come and speak, to give this tribute on behalf of the BirdLife family. John was BirdLife Jamaica, really. Thank you.
Okay, and now, Mr. Levy.
This is indeed a very special occasion for me. It is special in that I have known John for more than just about 50 years. What I have to say is not in the same vein as the tributes that have been articulated earlier, but rather about a period that you have heard nothing. That was John's days at Ramble Hill Farms, which we owned with a group together for over 30 years. Before that, I will just tell you how I came to meet John on my first visit, at least, to Southaven. Mas Fletcher and Gordon was retained to carry out an inspection to find out if product had been packed at a factory. Needless to say, none of the lawyers other than myself wanted to take on the assignment. I thought this was wonderful fun, and it turned out to be the best assignment I've ever had from a fun standpoint. When I arrived at Southaven, I was greeted by John, who took me around and showed me all of the processes that one went through in order to pack and cure mangoes in brine. There were 2 coopers. There were pieces of barrels scattered all over the place which we were trying to put together. There was a gaggle of women speaking at the top of their voice, peeling mangoes, putting them in buckets and throwing them into a huge container. And then out in the open yard, there were dozens and dozens of barrels lying on their side with a little peephole in the middle, all facing upwards. John said, this is how you have to look in there if you want to inspect the mangoes, to see that I've packed them. Well, I was aghast, but I dutifully went and looked into each hole for a few of the barrels and saw about 15 or 10 little pieces, and then moved on. I asked John why this was done this way. He said, well, the curing process releases gases, and we have to have a hole for their release. And secondly, the process requires 6 weeks, and that curing period, we have to put additional brine to top up the brine that has evaporated. And so that's why we have this hole. But when we are shipping it, we bung it. So I said, fine, counted the barrels, went back and made the report to client in England. And this continued once a week for 6 weeks and a couple of times after, because after the brining process takes 6 weeks from when, or 8 weeks from when the brine is applied to the mangoes. So you stop peeling mangoes, and then you have 6 weeks to keep curing the thing, and then you export. So I was involved in that. Truthfully, not many years after, I had come to realize that John was a most truthful and honorable gentleman. The consequence, my trips to Southaven reduced, and he would telephone and advise me of the inspection that I had carried out at Southaven so that I could relay that to my clients. And that was how our relationship developed. John and myself became very, very close business and social friends, and he was a person who I greatly admired. John was an avid reader with an insatiable appetite for knowledge. There was hardly a question or a situation or an issue in which John did not know something about it and had a sensible answer. In fact, in the 30-odd years at Ramble, whenever we had a query and never knew the answer, the retort was simple. Let's ask John. And we always got to understand what the query was about. Two things I learned from John, which will lead me into Ramble Hill Farms, was that one of the products that he processed and sold were maraschino cherries. Maraschino cherries come from Italy in 45-gallon plastic drums. They have been treated with some substance and are nearly white and horribly acid. I asked John, why do they send them here in this condition? He said, it is my job to reconstitute them with sugar syrup, coloring, and artificial flavoring. And that's what you eat when you get a maraschino cherry. Needless to say, that's the last day I ever ate one. But John was very innovative. And in the 70s, for those who did not experience it, there were great shortages. And there were a lot of products that could not be imported. John decided that he would use a similar approach to the maraschino cherries. And he grew solar papaws and used the flesh as the base for reconstituting product, adding sugar, adding coloring, and artificial flavoring, and then putting it into all of the big products we had in Jamaica at that time. Well, my approach to those products was different. I continue to enjoy them. I now want to turn to Ramble Hill Farms. You've heard nothing about it. Perhaps that's a good reason. In people's lives, there are often things that one wants to keep private and secret, and not too many people may know about. And perhaps John, in not expanding too much on Ramble, may have been trying to protect his friends. So I will accept that as such. John and Eddie Nesbeth, who worked with him as his manager at Fletcher Bowman, purchased a farm at Ramble in St. Thomas in the early 80s. And John planted solar papaws for the purposes I have indicated on it. John invited me to share in the investment of the farm, as it was taking a very long time to complete. And he was having some difficulties with completion because with farms like that of 200 and odd acres, there were always boundary problems and problems with banks saying you have to cure this boundary problem before I can advance the money, etc. So I invested with John and Eddie in the farm. And then very shortly after, we put together a group of 10 compatible shareholders to become gentleman farmers, which expression actually includes ladies who have farms in the Blue Mountain region. And Ramble Hill Farm in southern Jamaica was the lowest Blue Mountain farm in Jamaica. At sea, from above sea level, it was only 1,000 feet, but it did have hills that went up to another 800-900 feet in order to qualify. When we acquired the farm, which was originally a cattle property and an abattoir, there was a derelict house in it, which we fixed up and provided offices. It was 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, fully furnished. Office had bathroom with it, everything with mod cons. Water was supplied from a spring about a half-mile away on the property, but it was piped down, and that's what we used. John undertook the establishment of the coffee. Well, we did a lot of planting, and we made a lot of discoveries. The coffee needed, in the heat of Ramble, a lot of water. And we did not have sufficient water from the spring. We put in all sorts of irrigation. We did drip, we did whatever. But we couldn't produce coffee. Forget about the flavor. We couldn't produce coffee beans of an acceptable size without water. John and I soon recognized that in order for the farm to continue, we would have to get in to the brining of mangoes. So instead of having a mango brining and operation at South Haven and bringing the mangoes to that processing plant, we established a processing plant at Ramble where the mangoes were. And as you may have heard, the mangoes are only beef mangoes. Reason being, they are firm and not too hairy. They were the gold standard of mangoes shipped to Sherwood's, because at that time, Sherwood's green label mangoes, mango chutney, guaranteed a certain amount of crunchy pieces in each bottle. And that's what our mangoes were sent there to do. Well, John reestablished contact, and we resumed the operation. We recognized that it would be inappropriate to be qualified as a factory with all of what went with it. So we used barbecues and wash basins and the shed, which we expanded with tarpaulins during the peeling operation, to carry out the same mango operation that I had marveled at South Haven. The only difference was at this time, we shipped mangoes in plastic 45-gallon drums, and later on, we started to ship them in plastic drums that actually were cone-shaped so they could stack. So it was much cheaper to import the barrels than have them singly on a broken shipment coming in. Through John's influence, what we established at Ramble was a true, genuine cooperative. The mango suppliers, pickers, peelers, briners, marketers ourselves were all together in a project in which we had a common goal and a common purpose. And this was well known throughout Jamaica. Without John's influence, I do not think that I could possibly have set up something that would have been that important to the community, but it was. They considered themselves part owners of this cooperative. It was so influential that when they would have hold-ups in farms throughout the Blue Mountains by gunmen, when they stopped our vehicle with the pickers, somebody who stopped the vehicle was sure to say, "No, let them through, them are the mango man." And I assure you, they would not have had any robber men in the hills if they had attacked the mango men. Such was the influence of the cooperative. Ramble was also famous for its curry goat cricket. We were the original inventors with our own rules of T20 cricket, and they adopted most of our rules in the current game. The only rules that they did not adopt was that no batter could get out without having scored a run, And after scoring 20 runs, every batter must come in because people were tired of seeing him batter. So important was the Corrigan cricket there that whenever there was test cricket at Sabina Park, the test commentators would always big up and big up again the Corrigan cricket at Ramble, and if it was being played a month's time, they would tell you exactly when it was played, and you must go out there and participate in that. The contract with Sherwoods came to an end when they decided that it was too expensive to cook the West Indies firm gold standard mangoes from Jamaica. They were the last to cook, and that was too expensive. The consequence of that is that they stopped importing those mangoes and reformulated mango chutney, which no longer had crunchy pieces in it. So that set us back, and again, to find out how to generate revenues for the farm. One of the things that the farm became famous for was its culinary delights produced by our late chairman, Peter Fletcher. The meat kind was all fifth quarter. It may be trotters, steppers, kidney, liver, wild hog, and anything of that kind. That was the meat kind. And he invented the dish, he said, of cabbage and dace for greens. Cabbage, simple, but dace was a tinned fish from Asia. And that one had to have every Saturday when we went out to the farm. On one occasion, John's brother was visiting Jamaica with his wife, and John invited them to lunch. It was a most interesting occasion. John's brother was ecstatic about the food and kept sampling and sampling this dish and that dish and more and more and more. However, his wife kept taking up the fare, carrying it up with a fork, bringing it back down and putting it at the other end of the plate. Never, ever went to her lips. And this continued throughout the meal. She was, however, extraordinarily polite and thanked Peter for a wonderful lunch. Recognizing that Ramble would come under pressure if we never got back into the mango brining business, John contacted his US broker and found out that our mangoes that went to the States were going to Smokers. And he made direct contact with Smokers, and we started shipping directly mangoes in brine to Smokers, and we became their sole supplier. One of the interesting things about this mango in brine we supplied to Smokers was that we got a report from Smokers that a shipment had been detained and was to be dumped. So John got onto the customs officer, who I think was Italian, and then said, we do have a right of appeal, but Noel, you have to deal with that. Well, I soon learned while John had passed the buck. When I spoke to the lady, she was extraordinarily officious and rude. More than that, she barred any appeal. Perhaps I had been a little bit aggressive, I don't know, but it was barred. So we had a choice. Dump the mangoes and perhaps lose the barrels and pay the cost of dumping, or have them reshipped to Jamaica at our expense. Well, John and I had a divergence of views, but I prevailed. He said, John, we are going to ship back these mangoes to Jamaica We are going to rebrand them. We are going to give them a different description, because I believe that this is why the woman has refused them. And we will see what happens. John eventually relented, and so said, so done. The mangoes came back to Jamaica. We rebrand them, reshipped them. But instead of shipping them as mangoes in brine, we shipped them as cured mangoes for mango chutney. The mangoes went back, they arrived, and they were again detained. And we were on tenterhooks. They were detained for 3 to 4 weeks, and then we got a message from Smuckers. The shipment has been released. So that silly cow who refused them had taken the view that the mangoes in brine were to be bottled for human consumption. And that is why she had refused to allow them even to be the shipment to be even appealed. So Smuckers became the name well known to everyone at Ramble Hill Farms. And the consequence of that and John's effort is that there was a research birding project at Ramble Hill Farms in which nets were stretched across the rows of coffee to catch birds which were released, weighed, tagged, were caught, weighed, tagged, and released and set free. Apparently, the Smithsonian Institute became aware of the project, and they sent a representative to have a look at the project. That representative came to Jamaica and learned about the research project, which he observed, and all about mango in brine from the head foreman, who made the point of telling him time and again that we are the sole suppliers of mangoes in brine to Smuckers. We then appeared, Ramble Hill Farms, on the website for the Smithsonian Institute, featuring both the research project and the mangoes in brine, and the fact that we had a cooperative which shipped mangoes in brine to Smuckers. That was the kind of influence that John had when he set up projects. Well, all good things must come to an end. We got a monster order from Smuckers, which we filled, double what they had ever ordered, and thankfully there was a monster crop of beef mangoes. That, however, was the last crop, an order from Smuckers. They had elected to use instead freeze-dried mangoes, which would have a different flavor than mangoes in brine, and those freeze-dried mangoes would come from California. The consequence of that was that the revenues for the farm dropped dramatically, and in a last-ditch effort, we turned to see whether we could maintain a business through estate coffee. So, under John's watchful eye, we reaped, peeled, dried, bagged the coffee, and then coffee roasters roasted it, and they bagged it. The label that we had for the coffee was Ramble Hill Estates Bird Lovers Coffee, 100% Jamaican coffee, organic and grown under deep shade trees, all of which was true. However, we did not have any marketing organization nor the funds to start one, and we simply could not compete with everyone else who was selling coffee on the very marketing coffee on the very appropriate conditions and branding. And so that product, which was dedicated to John, really, in appreciation of the services he had rendered to the farm, came to an end as its market was limited to, in effect, shareholders of Ramble and their friends. That brought an end to the farm because we could find no way to maintain the revenues, and we sold it. And happily, we were able to return to the investors not only their capital, but a doubling of it. And I should like to really thank John for all he taught me and all of the experiences we had. And I can assure you that I will not be bringing to this meeting all of them, because if they were not in his autobiography, he wished them to remain underground. Thank you.
Well, that was certainly very enlightening and enriching. Thank you, Brother Noel. Thank you, Ricardo, Andrew, Adam and Dylan, and Robert. We've certainly learned a lot about what John did and also about who he was. And what stuck out for me was just ask John, which is a word that I've lived by for the last 17 years. And I'm the treasurer of the complex where he lives, and from now on it's going to be just ask Andrew. And also Corrigold cricket, and after you score 20, you have to come out because we're tired of seeing you. Well, John, we're never tired of seeing you bat, and we wish you were here to make your century, but you had a swashbuckling innings, and we delighted in every run that you scored. Thank you, John, for who you were. Okay, time is going along, folks, and we're approaching the midday hour. I think stomachs are starting to rumble. And we're going to be serving buffet style here, right up in front of me, and also under the tent. And I'm going to ask you to do that as quietly as you can. In the meantime, I invite you to, before we do that though, I invite you to direct your attention to the wall at the back, where we're going to be serenaded by Ulla and Alison, who will be doing a number called O'er Our Blue Mountains. So over to Alison and Ulla, O'er Our Blue Mountains, that John loves so much.
Thank you. Good morning, friends and family of John. Alison and I, we decided to play a tribute for John. It's the Angels song that comes down over the Blue Mountains, bringing peace to mankind. Fly well with the angels and birds over the mountains.
Okay, lovely.
make me over. Now that I do anything for you, don't make me over. Now that you know how I adore you, don't pick on the things I say, the things I do. Just love me with all my faults, the way that I love you. I'm begging you, don't make me over. Now that I can't make it without you, don't make me over. I wouldn't change one thing about you. Just take me inside your arms and hold me tight and always be by my side. If I am wrong or right, I'm begging you, don't make me over. Don't make me over. Now that you got me at your command. Accept me for what I am. Accept me for the things that I do. Accept me for what I am. Accept me for
lady love. Your love is peaceful like a summer's breeze. My lady love, with love that's tender as a baby's touch. You give me all of the things that I need so much. You're my world, lady love. Lady love, your love is cooling like the winter snow. My lady love, with love that's cozy as a fire's glow. And I keep on needing you, girl, a little more and more. And I thank you, my lady love. You know, it's not easy, keep love flowing smooth. People are people, and they all have their moods. But it's so nice just to have someone like you who wants a smooth and easy thing, and all the good times that it brings. Lady love, you've been with me through all of my ups and downs. My lady love, I once was lost, but now with you I'm found. You got the love I need, and I want to stay around. Heaven sent you down, my lady love. Let me tell you that it's not easy. Keep love going smooth. You know, people are people, they all have their moods. But it's so nice just to have someone like you who wants a smooth and easy thing, and all the good times and the joy that it brings. My lady love, you've been with me through all of my ups and downs and my crazy turnarounds. My lady love, you got the love I need, so stay around. Heaven sent my lady love. Lady love, oh lady love, you got the love I need so much, and I love your tender touch. Lady love, sweet lady love, you are so good to me. Lady love, like a warm sun breeze. That's what you do to me, lady love. Lady, 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 got the love I need so much, my lady love. I love your tender touch, my lady.
My baby don't care for shows. My baby don't care for clothes. My baby just cares for me. My baby don't care for cars and races. My baby don't care for hot dog places. Liz Taylor is not a star, and even Lana Turner's smile, something he can't see. My baby don't care who knows. My baby just cares for me. baby don't care for shows, and he don't even care for clothes. He cares for me. My baby don't care for cars and races. Baby don't care for. He don't care for high-tone places. Liz Taylor is not his style, and even Liberace smile. Something he can't see is something he can't see. I wonder what's wrong with baby. My baby just cares for. My baby just cares for. My baby just cares for me.
How you doing? I hope you're fine. Did your day take you through changes and mess up your mind? I just called to say that I'm on my way. Oh, and I'll see you when I get there. I hope you're in a good mood. You know a man's home is his castle, and I'm coming home to groove. Oh, and I'll see you when I get there. I'll see you when I get there. And you be ready for good loving. You be ready for good loving. 'Cause I worked hard all day. Now I'm coming home to be with the one I love. Candlelight, cold wine, soft music on the radio. You got everything you need from the store. 'Cause I'll be in for the evening and I don't wanna come out no more. Oh, and I'll see you when I get there. I'll see you when I get there. And you be ready for good loving. You be ready for good loving. 'Cause I worked hard all day. Now I'm coming home to lay and relax my mind. Oh, I'll see you when I get there. I said I'll see you when I get there, baby. I said I'll see you when I get there. I said I'll see you when I get there, baby. I said I might have to run all the way because the bus might be slow today. I've been thinking about you all day long, and I just can't wait to get home. I'll see you when I get there. I'll see you when I get there, baby. I've been working hard all day. You've been on my mind. I can't go home without you, darling, by my side. I'll see you when I get there. I'll see you when I get there. I'll see you when I get there. I'll see you when I get there.
If you see me walking down the street and I start to cry each time we meet, walk on by, walk on by. Make believe that you don't see the tears, just let me grieve in private, 'cause each time I see you, I'll break down and cry. Walk
Hello. Hello, everyone. Greetings. I hope everyone has had a chance. We've all had a chance to be served, and we've all enjoyed the delightful brunch that Andrew and Allison and Mark have provided for us. Oh.
Probably a little less than that.
Calling all bird watchers. We're inviting all bird watchers to come into the main hall, please, for a photo. A last photo with John. All bird watchers, please come to the main hall for a photo. By 78, by size 78, yeah, whatever. Yeah, okay. Okay, once again, calling all bird watchers into the main hall. If you want to be in the photo with John, please make your appearance now. Those who are outside the tent, please feel free to make your way inside again. We're going to be having an open mic soon where those who are here can share memories and stories of John. Okay, thank you, bird watchers, for that memorable photo with our dear John. Okay, may I invite those on the outside to make their way back in, if they feel so inclined. And those of us who are inside, we're going to have a time of open mic. Open mic, ladies and gentlemen. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and share a story or a memory of John? Okay. Hold on a little. What's your name, bro? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? One and all. We have a memory being shared by a colleague of John from Country Traders. She will introduce herself and share her memories and her stories. Please direct your attention to her and let's hear her side of the amazing life of John. Go ahead there.
The amazing life of John. The amazing life of John is so true. My name is Cheryl Thomas. I came to Country Traders in 2006, 18 years ago. And we know John as Father Fletcher. That's what we call him. Because we work with his son and him. So he is Father Fletcher and Mark is Mr. Fletcher. My fondest memory of Father Fletcher is when I came there, Adam and Dylan were 3 years old when I came to Country Traders. I had a son, or I have a son who was the same age as they were. And Adam and Dylan would take Father Fletcher's pencils and come into my office and sharpen them down to the rubber bump. And Father Fletcher would come in and say, "Oh, Cheryl, look at what these boys have done to my pencil. I don't have any more pencil." So I said, "Okay, Father Fletcher, let me go get you another pencil." But then he would come in and he would tell us stories of his time when he was, how he came to Jamaica and why he didn't go back. And every year he would come and say, "Oh, Cheryl, it's time for you to send another 2 packs of coffee to my brother." So I said, "Father Fletcher, your brother never ever come here?" He said, "Once. And he doesn't like Jamaica, so he's not coming back. But I fell in love with Jamaica, and we're here." So he would come around. I had another co-worker who passed on maybe 3 years ago. And he would tell us stories of his life. And I asked, how did Mr. Fletcher got the name Spot? Because I used to hear people come in and said, "Spot, how you doing?" And, he told us the same story that Andrew gave. So we had fun memories of Father Fletcher. And I can tell you a little secret. When I want anything to get done at the office, I want some of my things to be come into play, and so that Mr. Fletcher would listen to what I have to say, and some of the strategies I would put in, I would tell Father Fletcher, because they go to lunch every day. And Father Fletcher would tell Mark, and sure enough, 2 days later, it would be, "Oh, Cheryl, get this done." And I say, "Oh, thank you, Lord." So anytime I need anything done, I tell Father Fletcher, and I know it will be done. So I had fun memories with him. And when he retired, we all missed him because we really didn't want him to go. But he said, "Oh, I can't manage it again to come down." But every now and then he would come to the office and we would enjoy his company. And when I hugged him, he would say, "Lord, you're going to squeeze out the life out of me." And so, but he was wonderful, and we're really gonna miss him. And so we say to John and Mark and Adam and Dylan and the rest of the family, our condolences. We really do miss Father Fletcher.
Thank you, Lady Cheryl. That's a lovely memory. And now over to our friend, Senator Grant. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ambassador. Mark, Andrew, ladies and gentlemen, my colleague Jason, I stand to share 3 amazing stories, 3 amazing scenarios as it relates to Mr. John Fletcher. Firstly, I was traveling to Japan and I stopped in Canada by my brother, who actually is an accountant, and his wife is an accounting practitioner. And I indicated to them that Mr. John Fletcher had passed. And they were so devastated because he gave them their first opportunity at Salada Foods as accountant. And they shared this lovely story that at Mountain and Heron, when they went to do stock count and the stock did not balance. They were all challenged to go back and find Mars John coffee. So when I came back, I shared it with Mark. And I just want to say both Gordon and Marcia, who are now residents in Canada, my brother who is a chartered accountant there, he said he will always remember the contribution of Mars John to their lives at Salada Food. The second aspect is, in my capacity as chairman of the Jamaica Coffee Exporters Association, representing my colleague Jason, I saw Graham here, the Shirleys, John O'Minot, and Mark, who is a member of the JCEA, to really salute the work of John Fletcher to the development of the coffee industry in Jamaica. He has made an indelible mark on its development. We see him as a champion, Mark and Andrew, of coffee. In fact, he was one of the founding members of the Jamaica Coffee Council, right? So his contribution to coffee, I heard a lot about birds, which touched me in a particular way, but his contribution to coffee will always be remembered. And no doubt that has influenced Mark to enter the coffee business, and is one of the actors and traders and tremendous contributor to the development of the Jamaican coffee industry. On behalf of all the membership, Mark, we want to, and Andrew, we want to express our condolence, and we want to say that you do have our full support and our prayers. The third aspect is my association with John Fletcher, Mr. Fletcher, when I entered the coffee industry in 1983. And it is ironic and not coincidental that Jason is here. But prior to Jason coming in, I saw the Shirleys, Minot, and of course Dunkley. Because in the 80s, the association of Keeble, John Fletcher, the Shirley, Uncle Jackie, and Carlisle Dunkley were persons that I actually were introduced to when I came in the coffee industry. And the story that I'd like to share is surrounding about Ramble Farm. And I think I shared it with Mark before. When Mr. John acquired Ramble, and he had asked Keeble at Mavis Bank to process the Ramble Farm's coffee separately. And as a young practitioner back in those days, I was the one that was there trying to learn and doing the stuff. So when we got all of these boxes coming in from Ramble Farm, we dry them separately. We hull them, and then we put it through the screen. 95% of it fell through the 15 screen. Jason, they all sat on the 14 screens. Yes? So 15 screen was number 3. And of course, Mr. Fletcher, Mr. Minot, Shirley, Keeble, they were all members of the Jamaica Coffee Council. And they brought in David Evans to cut the coffee. And David says, this coffee tastes good. It can be called Blue Mountain, but it can be sold in any barrel. So from grade 1, 2, and 3's barrel. So they all got together, went to the coffee board, and Sir John Pickersgill was there, and they came up with a category called 3 fines. And 3 fines, which was the screen below number 3 screen, which was 15. So they all sat on the 14th screen. And so we offered it to the bars on sample. And so we developed a definition around tree fines. So in fact, it speaks to certainly the type of, when I heard about the issue about the mangoes and the sauce and the birds, he also caused game-changing action in the coffee industry. And for that, we'll always remember him as a game changer and a champion for the Jamaican coffee industry. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you, Sir Norman, for reminding us that John is a champion in so many ways. And you're uniquely placed to witness his contribution to coffee over 40 years. So thank you for that. Okay, and now we have another memory. Please introduce yourself and go right ahead.
Good day, everyone. My name is Ava Nesbitt. John O. Fletcher, 1929 to 2024. The lifespan of this great man, who I call J.O. In 1962, I went to live in Boardwalk from Kingston, where my husband was working at Jamaica Citrus Growers. J.O. Fletcher was the managing director, and Eddie, my husband, the factory manager. I remember living in one of the company's houses on their estate, where there were a lot of trees which caused croaking lizards to infest the houses, making me very uncomfortable. J.O. heard of my distress, and within the week he immediately removed us to a bigger house with fully meshed windows. That made me so grateful to this man. Shortly after, I went to work at Jamaica Citrus for a while. And while there, John told me of his plans to move to Yallas in St. Thomas to form his own food processing business, and wanted Eddie to work with him as his production manager. So I realized I had to make a decision. I immediately got busy finding a house to live, prep school for my kids, and a job for myself. Of course, all that was completed within a month. So then I packed up my family and we moved to Kingston. Thanks to J.O. Fletcher for allowing me that move. We shared happy times at Fletcher Bowman for many years while they were there, until he gave up the factory and moved to coffee processing. Over the time, we remained good friends, seeing each other occasionally and chatting on the phone every week, especially after his retirement, where he boasted about his cuisine in the kitchen. J.O. Fletcher wrote his remembrance of my husband and read it at his funeral in 1996. This I still have today. J.O. was a considerate, kind-hearted man, very humorous, and was always giving sound advice to everyone who needed it. My family and I would certainly miss him. Rest well, my friends. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, darling. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mrs. Nesbitt, who I submit, and I stand to be corrected, maybe the person in this room who has known John the longest, over 62 years. If there's anyone who has known John longer, please come to the mic.
I need to sing the song because Alison has to leave.
Okay.
So let's sing the song and then you come to back.
Okie dokie. All right. Before we continue with the open mic, we're going to change it up a bit. And now that your stomachs are full, you're going to be singing even more lustily than you did when you sang in the morning. So Lady Alison is going to lead us in the song that's printed in your program, which is the great Three Little Birds by Bob Marley. And her dear sister, Leonie the Songbird, is going to help us to make sure that we stay on key and stay on tune. So, Alison and Leonie, over to you. Everybody, please participate.
Hi, everyone. You all have the words. We're gonna go 3. Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Sing it, don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smiling with the rising sun. 3 little birds pitch by my doorstep, singing sweet songs of melodies pure and true, saying, this is my message to you. Sing it, don't worry about a thing, worry about a thing, 'cause gonna be alright. Sing it, don't worry about a thing. Don't you worry a thing now, gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, smiling with the rising sun. 3 little birds pitch by my doorstep, singing sweet songs of melodies pure and true, saying, this is my message to you. Sing it, don't worry, don't you worry. Every little thing gonna be alright. Sing it, don't worry, don't you worry, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Thanks to John, everything will be alright.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Leonie. We can just hear John saying, don't worry, everything is going to be all right. Okay, folks, we're not far from wrapping up today, but we still have a few minutes. If anyone else would like to share, the floor is open. And we welcome Mr. Ricardo.
Yes, thank you again. Okay, so something interesting happened just now. I was handed this journal by Andrew, which is John's birding journal. You know, it's a full calendar year where he made notes of what he did. So I skipped to November 16, and I'm going to relate what happened on November 16 today, and he has it by year. So in 1994, on this day, John wrote in this journal, Graham Heights, hummingbird seen feeding chick for the first time. Heavy rain on November 12 and 13 made me fearful she had failed to hatch the egg. So right there, on this day, 94, chick, because he was worried it wouldn't have hatched. 2 more entries. He heard a Jamaican vireo for the first time in many months in Graham Heights. Now for 2002, he was at Forest Park up in the Blue Mountains, and he saw ringtail pigeons and not much else. And that's his entry for November 16 in his journal. And I have some ideas what I'm going to do with this. So thank you, Andrew. Well received. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So we need to encourage all of us to be like John and keep a journal. Okay, we're now going to hear from Lady Tara, who is from Sherborne Heights and member of our walking group and the Sherborne Heights family. And I dare say, perhaps the Badencourt family. But we'll also hear right afterwards from Kay McNair, who is definitely from the Badencourt family, where John and Andrew lived.
Thanks so much, Paul. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. So I'm Tara, and my family moved to Sherborne Heights in 2003. My mother is a part of BirdLife Jamaica and also a part of the Sherborne Walking Group. And I'm her daughter, so Celia's daughter. So I just want to share with you a couple of little things from this year. So I moved back to Sherborne about a year and a half ago or so, and had occasion to be interacting with John a little bit more this year. So the first thing again is just how we would talk about what he was reading. I'd always just say, John, what are you reading? And we would talk about books, and he would lend me books, and we would discuss books. And so that was something that I really cherish in terms of just my memory of him. In fact, on my couch right now is a book that he lent me earlier this year. So I have to get to that book and finish it and make sure I do. On his birthday this year, we had breakfast with him. My mother has a tradition, it seems now, she's had that tradition of having John over for breakfast on his birthday. And so we've got to share John with his family on that very special day. And so this year we had breakfast. I took some photos. And what I would do, even not only on that occasion, I would kind of covertly record John as he spoke because I wanted to make sure that I would just hang on to what he would share. And so I have in my phone, still on this phone and perhaps previous phones, just recordings of John's voice and what he would share with me. This year as well, there were a few times where I saw John walking by himself in Sherborne, and I said, you know what, let me just go out and join him and just have the walk with him. And I was so glad to just have him to myself for that, like a half an hour. I think he probably would have gone back to his house, a bit earlier if he didn't have company on the walk. So I said, you know what, let me just keep John's company. And we would just walk and talk, me and him alone. And there were a few occasions this year where that happened. And so I got to just pick his brain as I take every chance I get to do. And that was very, very special for me. And I think he was just glad in those moments to just have someone to walk with and to share. I mean, once you ask John anything, he's just going to talk. And so, his days at Golden Eye and talking about he would have slept in Ian Fleming's bed and what he had. I mean, there's just so many things. So I cherish all of those moments, and I cherish our talks about books, and I just, John has been a part of my life for a very long time, well, long relative to my 35 years of age, but, so yeah, we just love John, and I'm just so happy to have known him in my life, so thank you.
Hi, everyone, I'm Kay. For me, I met Mr. Fletcher in 2018. I live in Baden Court, so I'm his neighbor. But it seemed like so many years before that. I still see him walking past my house, and when he's coming back from his walks, he would stop and hi, Kay. Sometimes he wouldn't be able to hear if I'm calling to him, so I'd have to run up to him, and, just... but Mr. Fletcher was an extraordinary man. I remember every moment with him. Some evenings like Tara, he would exit the gate before I did, and I'd be walking my dog, and I see Mr. Fletcher down the road, and I'm like, Jakey, let's go, and I'd catch him up, and we'd walk up the hill, and as Tara said, maybe if he didn't have someone to walk with, he would have gone back home, sooner. But we would walk up the hill, and we would talk, and it's just really hard for me, to look out sometimes, and I swear I see him walking past the house. But he always had time. Very patient, spoke very calmly, always wanted to know what was going on with you. He asked about Chris Jr. He was always just so concerned, and I loved that man. And I miss him, and as a part of the Baden Court, and on behalf of everyone, Paul is also one too. We really miss Mr. Fletcher, and I never thought I'd be here today. Not when I saw Mr. Fletcher 2 months ago, I was like, I want to be like Mr. Fletcher at 95. And then it was like, my son said to me one day, Mom, I saw Mr. Fletcher yesterday. He was coming up the hill, and it's like he aged in 2 weeks. He could see him. He was coming up, and he wasn't breathing the same, and he just never looked the same, and it was very sad for me. But I miss him, And I am happy for this moment that we actually get to celebrate his life. And I will never forget him. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Tara, for those tributes from Sherburne Heights and Baden Court. Wonderful. 8907KH, white mark X. You are blocking someone. 8907KH, white mark X. Please move your car if you know, as soon as you can. Someone would like to leave. Okay. Any more tributes? Here we go. Go right ahead. Please introduce yourselves and go with your tribute.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marilyn Mitu Van Horn.
And I'm Charmaine Mitu. Charmaine Mitu. Marilyn is my sister.
Okay. There's so much to say, but I'm going to just be brief. I went to work with Mark and John in 1995, and I must tell you, it has changed my life. John was not only John Fletcher, he was Father Fletcher, as Cheryl had said earlier. And I learned so much from him, from the bird watching. I remember when Father Fletcher would go and do his bird watching each year, he would take to the office, and I had to do his report, type it up for him to send in. And because of that, I actually have come to know so many birds. Right now, if I see a bird, the first person I think of is Father Fletcher. Because I normally call and tell him the type of bird I saw. A few weeks before he passed, I was at home, and when I looked, I saw 2 doctor birds. And they were outside, around each other for quite some time. I backed into the house, took my camera, my phone, and recorded them for almost half an hour because I wanted to send it to Father Fletcher for him to tell me what they were doing. And today, I know that Toby was his favorite bird. I remember there was a bird was hatching at Cornwall University. And each morning he had his iPod, and he watched it. They would send the recording of what happened each day. And he would call me into his office and, Marilyn, come and look at this. And we watched that bird each day, leave the nest, come back, sat on it until they were hatched. Also, I remember when he was meticulous with numbers. And each day when the coffee was roasted, they would have to take what was roasted to him, and he recorded all of that. At the end of the week, he could tell you how much coffee, green beans was roasted, how much was packed from it, and that was the man. He also, on Fridays, when he's doing the payroll, he hardly used his calculator. He would add those numbers across instead of using the calculator. I remember he used to go for his walks. And I remember one day he came and gave me a piece of bush and said, Marilyn, I bring something for you. Taste it. I said, what is this, sir? He said, taste it. When I tasted it, it was neem. It was so bitter. He laughed me to scorn. And 2 weeks later, when he said, that is neem, the trees are along the path that I walk. And I said, I'm going to bring this to see what Marilyn thinks about it. 2 weeks later, he brought a paper bag and put on my desk. I said, what is this, sir? He said, look in it. It was a toothpaste made from neem. And Mr. Fletcher, Mark, and Andrew, Father Fletcher have left a legacy that we cannot replace. We will always think about him with fond memories. It's with mixed emotion that I'm here today telling you just a few of what we have been through. But just take hope in knowing that he lived a full life, and may God perpetual light shine on him. Amen.
Thank you, ladies, for that heartfelt tribute. Yes, Father Fletcher. Okay, we're in the last few minutes of this magnificent celebration of a life well lived. And we still have a few more moments. If there's anyone who would like to share. And while we're waiting on that person to come, remember I told you there would be a small quiz. Well, here is the first question. What is the name of John's first grandchild? What is the name? Somebody who is not a family member. Yes, I see a hand. Please tell me you're not related. What's the name of John's first grandchild? That's not the answer I have, unless there is something Andrew and Mark have not told me. Okay, we're going to have another tribute now. Please introduce yourselves and make your tribute. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you. I am Hugh Vaughan. John was my friend. I've heard a lot about John, and one aspect of him that nobody has mentioned, which I think we should. John knew every part of Jamaica, every single district, every beach, almost every tree. I had the pleasure of going with him to many of these places, way in the cockpit country, where cars can't go. You drive, you stop, you walk. And if there is somewhere further up the trail where the car can turn, you go back for the car and carry it up there. And you keep that way throughout. We walk from St. Elizabeth right through the cockpit country, all the way over to Trelawney, all about on a regular basis. He would plan where we would go, and it just almost every weekend, or at least once a month, we would go some distant, remote place. I remember when we went to where Bolt is from. That district is a triangle. One road meets another. And Bolt's house is just right in the corner. And we watched that place develop through Usain Bolt to become a village with a bar and shop and those things. You go a little further, you walk from there up to Ulster Spring. And there's a road from Ulster Spring that is one vehicle I ever see drive on that road. It wasn't licensed, it was a Toyota Corolla. And he would drive from there, come all the way down on that road. It was a track cut to join St. Elizabeth to Falmouth Pier. And it was supposed to be for the railroad. We went with John, spent a weekend there, and we walked down, and boy, that's when you realize John's capacity to walk. He's just ambling over these rocks, this man, a little older than me. And it was hard to believe how frisky and how brisk he was. My wife will remember the name of the road. My memory gives me trouble these days. But just to say to everybody, there was not a nook or a cranny in Jamaica that John didn't go. Not just Yellows, all over the Blue Mountains, all over Jamaica. Thank you.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done, you. You need help to go back?
Yes. My name is Dennis Stevens. I had the privilege of traveling with John for the last number of years. I always went in John's car. John took me and my wife together, and he would be on time, and he never, ever missed the opportunity of having me with him I don't know for what reason, but he was very kind to me, and I counted that as a special privilege. And John traveled with me and my wife for many years, and it came to a time when my wife became ill, and John would visit her. It is strange because I work at a hospital, and a lot of my colleagues that knew me quite well never visited, but John always came to visit her on a regular basis, and I found that a great privilege. Before that, I had a problem once with my brain. I had a stroke, and I had an operation to tie off the vessel that had expanded. And John came to visit me after I had the operation. And to play a little joke on him, which I now apologize for, as he walked up towards me, I looked at him and I said, "And who are you?" And John assumed that I had lost some of my capabilities with this operation. And the look on his face was so painful to me that I still remember it and I must apologize to his family for, as it were, causing him such momentary grief. And I said, "No, John, I know you are John." And that's, but I've always felt guilty for playing that little joke because I was never, in growing up, I was never very good or very healthy, and I had a lot of medical problems, and so I acquired a certain amount of casualty about when I became unwell. I didn't take it very seriously, but he took it seriously. And I was so affected by that I still remember it with a certain degree of, not shame, but I played a joke on him, which
Well,
I really should not have done.
Dennis, sorry, don't feel guilty because John told me about it roaring with laughter.
Yes. And so I'd like to say what a wonderful human being he was. Apart from all his qualities that he had, his heart was in the right place as far as I was concerned. And I always think of him on that particular occasion. The look on his face showed that he cared about me and my wife. And when my wife was in her last few months, he'd come on a regular basis and visit her, although many of her other friends did not. And John, as far as I'm concerned, was a perfect human being in terms of his feeling towards others and his friends. And so I'd like to thank him and the family from which he came for this kind of demonstration, without even being conscious of it, this demonstration of his caring nature. Wonderful human being, John.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis. Thank you, Dr. Hugh, for those lovely remarks. And as Dr. Hugh said, John had a fantastic sense of humor, so he wouldn't have been phased for very long. So don't feel too bad, Dr. Dennis. Okay, well, folks, we are thinning out, and our time is coming to a close. The answer to the question, by the way, is Bridget, Lady Bridget, who was born in 1984, John's first grandchild, and there are posters here that Andrew found in John's house, which is his house also. So we were going to hand them out to those who could answer the questions, But all the questions were answered in the various tributes. So my thunder was stolen. But please feel free to get a poster from Andrew if you would so like. I don't see anyone else coming forward, and we are getting close to the 1 o'clock hour. So I would like to say on behalf of the Fletcher family, how wonderful it has been to share this time with you. We're really happy and grateful that you could be here to take part in this celebration of a life well lived. We want to thank Big Spot and Little Spot and Mrs. Big Spot and young Little Spots and all the spots in the Fletcher family who are here. Andrew shared how much John was loved, and I can definitely attest to that from my personal experience and seeing others around him. And Robert Fletcher explained probably why that was, because he cared so much about us. It looks as if, we loved him because he first loved us. And he was a man who cared and loved and did everything with passion and excellence. I will miss him greatly. I can't imagine what it must be like for Mark and Andrew. And, for all of us, it's a terrible loss. But we have so much to treasure, so much to remember him by, such a great innings. So, Andrew, shall we close? We want to thank you very much. Thanks to the staff who did a wonderful job with the catering. Thanks to our audiovisual team, our cameraman, and our technicians over here who kept the sound and the video going very, very well. And just thank you all for coming and making this occasion so very special. So everybody get home safely, and let us treasure the memories of dear John in our hearts forever. Thank you and goodbye.
Going fast. Hot off the press.
I'll take one. Thank you. I'll take one for my grandchildren in Belgium.
Hot off the press.